We have some solid understanding on some of the basics of Hibernate. Now it's time to take a look at a very simple CRUD application where we perform the basic database operations like create, read, update, and delete. In a typical real-world web application, this is how it works. You'll have some front-end technologies like HTML or JSP on which the end user will interact, and the request will get forwarded to a controller logic, and something like servlet will take the request and forward that request to the next layer, which will be services layer, where the actual business logic will take place. So here you may use enterprise Java beans, etc. But this business layer is actually going to instantiate so-called a data access object. So data access object will have set of behaviors or methods, and each method will have a certain logic to interact with the database. In our simple CRUD application, we're not really concerned about all these layers on top, but instead we're just simply going to replace the business logic with the main method, which will reside in a separate class, and this class will interact with the DAO class, where we'll have all the list of methods that perform the CRUD operations to talk to the database. Now I can walk you through how this is achieved, but I want you to give it a try before you move on with my next video. But let me just give you a glimpse of what we're trying to do. Let's go to Eclipse. Okay, here is our DAO class, and here I've introduced few methods. The first of which is to load the session factory, and then we have a method to create a list of employees. I'm just simply going to use a for loop to populate the data in our table using Hibernate, of course. And then we have this read method, which when called would return a list of all the employees residing in the table. And we have the update method, and we're going to pass the identifier as a parameter. And based on the ID that we sent, its respective entry will get updated in the database. Similarly, we have delete record, and we send an identifier as an argument. And based on the identifier, we would delete an employee from the table. And finally, we got delete all method, which when called will delete all the entries in the table. And we have close session factory to close on the session factory. Pretty straightforward. And its corresponding main method from where we trigger everything, and we call all those methods. In our employee.java, which is a persistent class, I have now made this ID part of this constructor. That's because in real-world applications, the ID will be sent automatically by the view layer. But since our application is not a full-fledged MVC application, we have to explicitly provide the identifier from our main class. And that's why I had to add this in here. You'll see why when I demonstrate the example. Also, I have overridden this method toString so that when you're trying to display objects of this class, you would see a meaningful string rather than some random set of characters and integers. And in our config file, I've disabled these two properties because now we're performing quite a bit of transactions, and this is going to display all the SQL statements. I don't want that to happen. That will dilute the actual messages. So I have disabled this for the time being, and I have set this property to update. Actually, I have intentionally left one issue with our program, and when I talk about it, I'll also talk about this particular field. And in our pom.xml, I have actually added this library, log4j, which is a framework. Now this is nothing to get scared if you're not aware of log4j. We're just using this just to disable some of the unnecessary messages that gets displayed on the console. We're still using the good old system.out.println everywhere. We're not using that framework. I've used this just to address that particular problem, because when you get to see the output, we don't want to see all the Hibernate logs in here. We want to see whatever we're trying to display. So even if you don't have this, that's fine. It's just for our convenience I've done that. And we have this file, log4j, which corresponds to this framework, log4j.properties, that resides under the resources directory. And I have set this to off. This is what will disable all the logging to get printed on the standard output. So that's about it. Try to write the program on your own. It doesn't necessarily have to be the perfect code, but just give it a try. I'm going to walk you through all these in my next video anyway. So see you soon.